last week. Let me try to get it right today. Okay, we should be good to go. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we are going to continue our study with the origins and destiny of universe reality. And we're on slide 93 in the book. I mean, in the slideshow. And you know, all this came from the book. So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different because the next 3 slides, I believe, the type on them is so small that it's going to be difficult for anyone to read. So I'm going to go to the book where this starts, and we'll go from there. So this is the Trinity of Trinities, the 2nd level. So I'm going to unshare the slides. Now you can read this off the slide if you have the slides open, that's fine. And I'm going to share this in the book itself. I'm trying to anyway. There we go. And it should be a lot bigger that way. All right, so you can see it a little bit better. All right, substantially better. Yep, okay. And the very first paragraph I'm going to read, that this is where we ended last time, but I want to read through this because it's the setup paragraph for the 2nd level, which we're going to talk about tonight. All right, so I'm going to read through this myself real quick.
Roger?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think I'm hearing an echo. Maybe you didn't hit record for.
Yeah, I hear it too.
Do you? Okay.
That means you didn't finalize your.
No, it's this. It's my speaker here.
Oh,
Oh, I can hear Rodney.
yeah, I did
How's
too.
that?
I can echo. Okay,
Right.
good.
Is that better? Should
More
be
better.
anyway. Huh?
More better.
We okay now? All right. You don't hear echo anymore, do you, dear?
Okay.
Do you hear echo anymore?
A little bit.
A little
Just a
bit.
little
I can
bit?
hear a little bit. Yeah,
Okay,
I
I
can hear Rodney.
got the speaker off. I don't know where it's coming from, unless it's my. No, that's not it. It's off now. Okay. All right, so let's start from here. The association of these 3 trinities and the Trinity of Trinities provides for a, now we're talking about all 3, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level in this. All right, provide for a possible limited integration of reality. This grouping contains causes, intermediates, and finals, inceptors, realizers, and consummators, beginnings, existences, and destinies. The Father-Son partnership has become Son Spirit, and then Spirit Supreme, and on to Supreme Ultimate and Ultimate Absolute. So that's the progression of reality over time. Right now, we're still in the Father, Son, and Spirit, right? We're working on the Spirit and Supreme, stepping into that. So that's what they're talking about. So all the rest of them are in the future. Even to the Absolute and Father Infinite, the completion of the cycle of reality. Likewise, in other phases, not so immediately concerned with divinity and personality, does the first great source and center self-realize the limitlessness of reality around the circle of eternity, from the absoluteness of self-existence, that's God the Father, through the endlessness of self-revelation, God the Father again, to the infinity of self-realization,
Finality.
the finality, of self-realization, from the absolute of existentials, things that always has been, always will be, to the finality of experientials. So basically what they're saying here is that these combinations of Trinity of Trinities allows the universal Father to reveal himself completely from the beginning to the end to all reality. Okay.
Through all phases.
All phases of reality. His will comes through all 3 of them. Okay. And the next paragraph is where
See,
it starts to talk about the second level.
it still has the second, there's a background noise, I think.
Yeah, it echoes.
It echoes.
You still getting echoes from
Yeah.
somewhere?
Yes, sir.
That whole thing you read had echoes. It was more gentle, but.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix it, y'all. Honestly.
Oh, it's okay.
Interesting.
That's let me try this. Bear with me for a second.
Hear it?
Bear with me for a second. Yeah.
Bear with me a second. It's
Yeah.
repeating everything you're saying.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to fix it.
Okay.
That's device.
I think it's quiet.
Is that got it?
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's quiet. No,
No, there it is.
No, it's still back. External hub jump. Let me leave it on that. It's still there. Okay, well, let me try it another way. Need to eat up time to do this, but it looks like I'm going to have to go into my settings here. There's Letch.
Okay.
System sound.
hey, let.
Hello, how are you doing?
All
Good.
right.
Isn't it cozy?
Glad you could join us.
Well, I've got everything off. I don't know why it's still cooking on.
I mean, it's not really loud. It's just,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be aggravating on that, but
A little
I
bit, yeah.
don't know what else to do here. So,
Maybe-
and I
You
do
might have
have,
turned it off.
well, I've got everything turned down
I don't
on
hear
my
it.
end here. So
I think you're
Um,
good.
I still hear it back way in the background, but we're going to have to go with it because let me see if it could be this. See if that's it. I think I got it. It was my Facebook reverberating.
oh, good.
Okay. And technical support back to the meeting here. Okay. So let's start on this second level and see if we could get through these three slides. It's a lot of information on 3 slides. And that will cover the most difficult part of stuff we have been studying at that point. And from here on out, it should be a little simpler. Now, for y'all at home, this all comes from the Urantia book. The main meat of this comes from the forward, paper 105, and paper 106. So if you want to read this right from the book, you can read the forward, 105, and 106, and almost everything we've talked about is in those 3 papers. Okay, so for you, everybody at home. All right, so Diane, would you take that first paragraph there? Let me move up here.
The second level, the coordination of the 3 trinities inevitably involves the associative union of the experiential deities who are genetically associated with these trinities. The nature of this second level has been sometimes presented as, can we continue? Okay, 1, the supreme. This is the deity consequence of the unity of the Paradise Trinity, an experiential liaison with the creator and creative, children of the Paradise deities. The supreme is the deity embodiment of the completion of the first stage of finite evolution.
Let me go back up here and show the second level of trinities to y'all in the book here. It's there, but I better picture up here a little bit further. And this is a good way to look through the information we've been doing, because I have some notes I put in our version of the book to help explain this a little bit. But this is the second level. This is on that blue chart, all the blue charts. And notice here, it has the evolved supreme being in the left-hand corner. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And that indicates that the second level is at the point in which the supreme being has completely come into full fruition. Okay. So at this point, that's not the case, is it? Okay. And that's the experiential finite deity. So all experience goes into the finite deity of the evolved supreme being. Okay. The middle one is the qualified absolute. And this is what's called the revealed spiritual absolute, because the qualified absolute is also known as what? The deity absolute. So that's the very first one of the down on the big chart of the seven. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This big chart we have of the seven. See the qualified absolute, the unqualified, and the universal. So this is the revealed spiritual absolute, which is the will directly of God the Father. Okay. And then we have the eventuated ultimate being. This is what's called the transcendental absonite deity. And I'm not going to go into that very much because we got slides coming up that's going to explain the transcendental deity. And I don't want to confuse y'all beyond imagination tonight to get started off. So this is the second level of the Trinities of the Trinities. Okay. And this comes from this chart that we have all seen many times before. It's this one here that y'all have looked at before. That's the background, right? So all these triangles are on that main chart. Okay. So let's go back down here to 6, the level, first level, second level. Okay, here we go. We're on the second level. All right. So let's look at this statement on the supreme of the second level. Okay. It says, this is the deity consequence of the unity of the Paradise Trinity, the original first Paradise Trinity, with the creator children. So who would that be? That would be the creator sons and daughters, right? This is part of the seven, God the sevenfold. And the paradise deities, all those beings that are involved in the creation of the local universes. Okay. And it says the supreme is the deity embodiment of the completion of the first stage of finite evolution. So what they're talking about here is when all 7 super universes, finite evolution, reaches light and life. Because that's when the supreme comes into full fruition. Okay. So this is still into the future, but this starts the second level of the Trinity of Trinities when this happens. Okay. And then also involved in this is the ultimate, which is the next paragraph here. Right. Let me back this up. Oops, went too far. Way too far that time. 6, 8, 13. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm looking in the wrong place. Okay. Oh, Roger. This is hard to move this a little bit at a time. That's why I didn't want to do this way. Come on, Roger. All right, here we go. So the next part of this is the ultimate. There we go. We're back there. All right. So Rodney, would you take that number 2, the ultimate?
Yes, 2. The ultimate. This is the deity consequence of the eventuated unity of the second Trinity, the transcendental and absonite personification of divinity. The ultimate consists in a variable regarded unity of many qualities, and the human conception thereof would do well to include at least those phases of ultimacy which are control directing, personally experienceable, and tensionally unifying. But there are many other unrevealed aspects of the eventuated deity. While the ultimate and the supreme are comparable, they are not identical. Neither is the ultimate merely an amplification of the supreme.
Okay, let me kind of explain here on the second part of it, the ultimate. When people try to understand the supreme, the ultimate, and the absolute, they try to transpose who the supreme is into the next level, the ultimate or the outer space levels, and then try to transpose that into the absolute. But you cannot do that. They're three different entities, and their likenesses are totally different because we know the supreme is the finite experiential deity. The ultimate basically is the transcendental absonite deity. Okay, and let me explain what that means. Transcendental is past time and space. So it transcends time. In other words, a transcendental being, even though it may have a start, never has an end. Okay, so they consider that transcendental. It could be considered always has been, always will be, at least in the mind of God the Father.
But I thought that was existential.
It is existential also, but I want to transform that existential concept into transcendental because transcendental is not affected by time and space. Okay? So, a transcendental being is not affected whatsoever, even though they will be in the outer space levels, they're not affected in the sequence of events of time. That's what happens on paradise also. Paradise is transcendental. It don't care about time. Time and space in according to paradise are really one thing. It is only time, or space is just is, in time to us is a sequence of events. In paradise, time does not exist. It just goes on. In other words, there's no linear aspect of time in paradise, just like the personalities in paradise and the outer space level are considered absonite beings because they're part finite and part absolute. Okay? So the second level consists of transcendental and absonite personification, it says, of divinity, because the beings are there are just exactly the same. And the beings that are in this area, like the outer space levels or paradise or Havona, the beings in those areas will not be created.
They'll just be.
They will be. They will just appear into existence as needed.
And then once they appear,
they go on
there's
forever.
no end.
There's no end to them.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
When the beings in the outer space levels appear, will they have experience?
No.
They'll be like a blank slate.
They'll be like a blank slate, and they will be, how do I want to say this? They will be eventuated by a creator son and a creative mother spirit.
So there'll be no birth.
There'll be no birth.
They'll be fully mature beings.
They'll be created or eventuated as fully mature beings.
Will they be able to procreate?
We don't know that. They don't tell
Okay.
us it. You have to assume that if they're eventuated, since they're not finite, that would not be the case,
You would
right?
assume.
You would assume they wouldn't have any reproductive capabilities. Now, what's an example of that type of being, even though they're created? And that's the angelic core.
Well, that's true.
Think of the angelic core. They're created in pairs, but they have no reproductive organs, no reproductive capabilities. What's the exception in the local universe? And that's the material sons and daughters, right? The material sons and daughters would have sexual organs just like we do, and they reproduce just like we do, even though they're a higher form of life.
So the transcendental beings that we're speaking of that'll populate the outer space levels, what type of body? Material or Urantia?
They will have a finite absolute body. That's why they're called absonite. All right. So they're absolute and finite together. So they would have a finiteness to them, but these bodies would be absolute in the sense that they would never degenerate. There would be no disease, anything like that. All right. I know this is hard to understand. The other thing is, it is totally unclear if these beings will be able to reproduce themselves, because they will be produced by a creative mother spirit and a creator son. But to populate a large planet, you would think that they would make them in some form or fashion where they could reproduce, but it wouldn't be a sexual reproduction. What's an example of that we already have?
Sexual reproduction?
Without a sexual reproduction.
So it'd be more like a mental?
Midwayers, it's a mental thing, right? It would be a spiritual, Urantia, or mental coming together of two entities, and that coming together of those two entities, much like Trinitization, create a separate being.
Oh.
Okay? So it would be a non-sexual reproduction if that's the case. You see what I'm saying? Now you can kind of understand why there's no sex for mortals once they leave this planet.
Yeah.
Now they talk about coming together just like we just discussed as mortals, but that would be different than the finite sexual relationship. It reminds me of a movie that was out, Cocoon. Did y'all ever see Cocoon?
Oh yeah.
That was interesting.
Okay. And remember in the movie Cocoon where the guy that had the boat was in a swimming pool and one of the aliens was in the swimming pool with him, and she was trying to explain to him how they have relationships which were non-sexual. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And they had a coming together which was even better than the sex was. So that's kind of the way you have to think about this. Does that make sense? Because they tell us in the mention world there's no sexual reproduction for mortals any longer. The only beings that sexually reproduce past mortal are what? The material sons and daughters. So if you've lost the experience of having sex in this lifetime, which is required for you to go on, then you have to gain that experience by living with a material son and daughter, and you learn all of your sexual experience by observation.
Just
Not
doesn't
just
sound right.
yeah, but that's the way it works. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to get to you, make you understand it. Is there the whole living in this transcendental worlds and absonite worlds is not like finite living, right? It's totally a totally different level. Now, you want to even blow your mind even more, go down to the next paradise, the absolute, right? This keeps going. Well, I did it again. Let me see if I can get up here to get this done a little easier. Here we go. Oh, shoot. Come on. Sure. Really messed it up. Okay. So we talked about the ultimate. Let's go on to the absolute, which is the next one, right? All right. Lech, would you take the absolute there, number 3?
Yes. The absolute. There are many theories held to the character of the third member of the second level of the Trinity of Trinities. God, the absolute, is undoubtedly involved in the association as the personality consequence of the first function of the final function of the Trinity Absolute. Yet the deity absolute is an extended reality of eternity status.
Existential reality. It's an
Existential.
it's always has been, always will be, right? That's the
Yeah.
existential part of that.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm reading from my phone. It's hard to read it.
Yeah, it's even hard to read. The reason we're not reading from slides is the text is so small.
Yeah.
You couldn't see it. So that's why I'm going back to now for y'all who have the slides at home, this is the small type is for about 3 slides, maybe 4. So I'm going to be reading from the book itself for those 4 slides, and then we're going to be through most the really difficult stuff. So after that, we'll probably just go back to the slides because we don't have all that much left on this. Okay, so when we're talking about the absolute, we're talking about the Trinity absolute. And I don't want to go back up to that picture again because then I got to find all this all over again. But this Trinity absolute has the combination, just like the secondary, the second level, the absolute, and the beings in that is God the absolute, the Trinity absolute, and the deity absolute, I believe. If let me check that, make sure that that's the case. I don't want to tell you I was wrong. Hang on here. All right, the absolute Trinity is the evolved supreme. Oh, the absolute Trinity is the consumator of universe destiny. In other words, consumes all the remains of destiny and the ultimate supreme being. Okay, so that's the 3 combinations of the absolute Trinity. This can get real confusing on this. So let's go on to the next one.
To me, it's interesting. Like electricity to us mortals, humans, is a theory. And they're saying this is, there are many theories. So they're whoever has
Wrote
written
this?
this,
Yes.
it's just a theory to them.
Yeah. To them, it's just the theory. It's the advanced philosophy theories of the universe.
Trying
Now,
to understand it.
yeah, it's hard. That's why it's hard to understand it. Now, let me say this. These concepts that y'all are learning should be taught in a college, not on
Yeah,
a meeting like we're doing
definitely.
here, because this is not lightweight stuff. These concepts of the absolutes and that sort of thing should be college classes that you spend enormous amounts of time to understand the philosophy that they're trying to explain us. And that really should be this should be a college course more than anything else. So, if you don't get every little piece of it, don't worry about it, because even some of the philosophers of the universe don't understand it all.
Yeah, there you go,
Okay.
Gary.
So don't be too upset. You're not stupid, you're just human, right?
It's kind of like quantum physics. The experts in quantum physics themselves say they don't completely understand it themselves.
Yeah, it's a lot like this. And we're talking about religious philosophy, which is, this is about as heavy as you can get, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's go into the next one. Pam, would you take the next one, the concept difficulty regarding?
Uh-huh. The concept difficulty regarding this third member is inherent in the fact that the presupposition of such a membership really implies just one absolute. Theoretically, if such an event could take place, we should witness the experiential unification of the three absolutes as one. And we are taught that in infinity and existentially, there is one absolute. While it is least clear as to who this third member can be, it is often postulated that such may consist of the deity, universal and unqualified absolutes, in some form of unimagined liaison and cosmic manifestation. Certainly, the Trinity of Trinities could hardly attain to complete function short of the full unification of the three absolutes, and the three absolutes can hardly be unified short of the complete realization of all infinite potentials.
Okay, what are they talking about here? Remember this old chart of the seven absolutes? Let's go back up here. When we talk about the seven absolutes, what they're talking about is the three on the bottom. If I can find it again. Did I go the wrong direction? No, I didn't. Okay. This is the seven absolutes. Remember this from earlier? The Father, Son, and Spirit, paradise, the qualified, unqualified or universal, it's called, and the universal absolute and the unqualified. You see this?
Mhm.
Okay, which is interesting because on this chart, I've seen this chart in two different formats where the unqualified and the universal are swapped, and really I think that's a better representation because the universal goes in between the qualified and the unqualified.
That's what I
Okay.
thought.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of misnomer, but the point is this: what they're telling us is this: these three absolutes they feel will eventually be known as one unit absolute. Okay, let me tell you why that might be the case. The qualified is the will of God the Father, or the a spiritual revealed absolute, okay? Where the seven over here on this picture, the resolving absolute or the universal absolute is the absolute that resolves the tension between that which is the will of God and that which is finite, or in between. And that's what the unqualified absolutes, it's the unrevealed physical absolute, and it's the unqualified that pulls primordial matter from the bottom of paradise and creates local universe, finite universes. So the reason they think that this is eventually going to merge into one absolute is it will be the deity or will of God, the finite, and the in-between all brought together as one absolute from God the Father, which always comes back to what? The universal Father, or the I am, right? Okay, so all of them fit within the universal Father. All right, let me see if I can get back down here again. There's nether paradise there. Okay. Let me see if I can find 818. That's where I was. I know this is a lot of jumping around, but this is the only way, if you get a picture of this, to get this in your mind over a period of time, the more you study it, the more it makes sense to you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So in other
okay.
words, if that, it sounds to me like they're saying that this is an event that is in eternity. I mean,
Really? Yeah.
will it ever happen?
Yes, because they call it existentially. And the real concept, that's why I'm saying this should be taught in college, Rodney, because the concept of existential is this, which is not taught in any schools or physics or anything else, but existentially, something that always has been, always will be, is not a start and an end. Okay? It's a circle. So you can think of existential as being something that is in a circular pattern that goes around and around and around and around, so it never has an ending. Okay, so it really doesn't have a start, because God the Father is really the only first source and center. So once God the Father started the wheel going, the wheel goes forever. And when you get to the end of everything they're talking about, what happens? You go back to the beginning, and the process goes over and over and over again. The difference is this: the finite reality involved in this is an evolutionary process, and it's the same with the absonite worlds, the mid-Semitite worlds, and the absolute worlds. Once they're created forever once they settle in light and life. So the circle goes back to the beginning, but the evolutionary process of the finite involved part of it never starts over.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Just everything else. So you can think of it as a circle. That's why the universe, the seven super universes and the outer space levels, goes around paradise. That's what paradise is, the center. So you can think of the universe as a hub of a wheel with the spokes going out in 7 different directions.
7 spokes.
7 spokes that once started never stop spinning. Okay? And it's all under the control of God the Father. And that's what you would really call the concept of existential. Does that make sense? Because once it's started, it never stops. It just keeps going and going and going. And that's true with the finite universe too, but the difference is the evolutionary process does not repeat itself. It just keeps going on and on and on. Now, that's what the universe philosophers think. It is a possibility that once we get to the end of the 4th outer space level, that God the Father decides to add 3 more. You know?
Sure.
So that'll keep going and going and going. So it's the process that never stops. And now you see why I see this is a concept that could take its own study in a college course. It's just like physics. You get to a point where it starts all over again, even in a college course, right? Because it doesn't have an end. Nothing has an end. Okay.
Wow.
So that's the best way I can explain it. Does that make sense? You
Yeah.
still with me, dear? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So let's go on to the next. Gary, would you take the next one? It probably represents.
It probably represents a minimum distortion of truth if the third member of the Trinity of Trinities is conceived as the universal absolute, provided this conception envisions the universal not only as static and potential, but also as associative. But we still do not perceive the relationship to the creative and evolutionary aspects of the function of total deity.
Okay, so the universal absolute, that absolute that's in between the two, right? The qualified and the unqualified, or the deity and the unqualified absolute. The universal absolute is the in between, right? It's the glue that keeps everything together. Okay, so they're saying that in reality, the universal absolute is probably best conceived as the third member of the Trinity to Trinity that keeps all this stuff together and makes it work out as one total deity. So that's why they think that the three deities will eventually merge into one. Makes sense?
Hmm.
Y'all are still with me, right? We're not out in
Oh,
space
absolutely.
somewhere. Okay.
Or associative.
All right. Okay. Diane, would you take the next one, please?
Though a completed concept of the Trinity of Trinities is difficult to form, a qualified concept is not so difficult. If the second level of the Trinity of Trinities is conceived as essentially personal, it becomes quite possible to postulate the union of God the Supreme, God the Ultimate, and God the Absolute as the personal repercussion of the union of the personal trinities, who are ancestral to these experiential deities. We venture the opinion that these three experiential deities will certainly unify on the second level as a direct consequence of the growing unity of their ancestral and causative trinities who constitute the first level.
Roger, we can't hear you.
Okay, so can y'all understand that the three they think this concept of the personality realities of three different beings, God the Supreme, God the Ultimate, and God the Absolute, will come together just like the three normal absolutes, the deity absolute, the unqualified absolute, and the qualified absolute, right? That these three deities will come together. And we know that God the Supreme is the God of experience, right? For finite. Okay. So that means we should postulate that God the Ultimate is the experiential God for the first outer space levels. Okay. And that God the Absolute is the experiential God of all else that's left in the seven super universes and all the outer space levels. And that in reality, these three separate personalities will work as one into the future as the gods of all experiential realities for everything. Does that make sense? So,
Roger, can I ask a question?
yeah.
Could we visualize or think of these different like God the Supreme and God the Ultimate and the Absolute, as personalities or functions or something like that of God, the I am, to
Yes.
make it clear in our minds. For instance, if we put it on a more human level,
Yeah.
say Gary the humorist, Gary the serious, Gary the married, Gary the,
Hmm.
etc. Would that be a way of visualizing this?
Yes, it would be because you think of it this way. The deity absolute, which is the will of God, is a separate personality from God the Father, but within God the Father, which is confusing. But the deity absolute and the universal absolute both have personality. Okay. The unqualified absolute, however, does not have personality. Okay. So that's the other three absolutes. So you think of it this way. God the Supreme, we know, has personality because God the Supreme exists in paradise before the start of any experience. But he won't come into full fruition until all experience is done in the seven super universes. So he's got his own personality. Okay. Now, God the Ultimate has his own personality for the transcendental and absonite beings. Okay. So he's a separate personality from God the Supreme. Okay. And then God the Absolute has a separate personality, and he is the God of the experience of all absolute beings. Okay. So we have three personalities there we're talking about, all in the same sort of being. That's why people confuse them into thinking they're the same type of beings, but they're not, because one's a finite God, one's a transcendental God or absonite God, and the last one is an absolute God. Okay, so they have different domains, which is hard to understand. But what they're speculating here, that at some point, that's why they say, where you venture the opinion that these three experiential deities, because they're all gods of experience, will certainly unify on the second level as a direct consequence of the growing unity, they all coming together, of their ancestral and causative trinities who constitute the first level. So they think that these three gods will come together as one, just like the Trinity comes together as the original Trinity. Makes sense? So just as God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit all work as one unit, these three deities will eventually work as one unit, just like the original Trinity does. But they will also be part of the original seven absolutes. They're not separate from God the Father. So they still consist within God the Father himself. All right. I know this is hard stuff, y'all. You don't have to act like you know it all, but if you're exposed to it over time, it will make more sense to you.
It's
Okay, so
almost like looking into the mind of God.
it is. It really is. All right. So, Rodney, would you take the next one? The first level consists.
Yes. The first level consists of three trinities. The second level consists as the personality association of experiential evolved, experiential eventuated, and experiential existential deity personalities. And regardless of any conceptual difficulty in understanding the complete Trinity of Trinities, the personal association of these three deities on the second level has become manifest to our own universe, age, and the phenomena of the deitization of Majeston, who was actualized on the second level by the deity absolute, acting through the ultimate and in response to the initial creative mandate of the Supreme Being. And that's
Okay.
true.
Yeah, that's true. We know Majeston is the being of reflectivity, right, for all the universes. Okay.
Communication.
Communication, that's right. And let's go back here a little bit where it says these personality associations, the experiential evolved. Which one is that? That's the Supreme Being, right?
Okay.
The experiential eventuated. Which one is that? That's the next level, right?
Yeah.
The ultimate. And then we have the experiential existential, which is the absolute. So we have all three levels, and become because of the manifestation of these three levels working together as the second level, it automatically eventuated Majeston for communication throughout all these levels of reality. Okay, acting through the ultimate and as a mandate of the Supreme Being, because the Supreme Being, being the experiential God, needed the communication for all these seven super universes to be directed towards him, and then all future universes to be directed from the ultimate and the absolute. Okay?
And Majeston would come into play with them as well.
Right, exactly. Let me move this up with my finger so I can see where. Okay. See where I am here. This is 821. Okay, we're on the second one here. Give me a second, y'all, because these are really small on the others. All right, this is moving into the third level. This will be the next slide. So believe it or not, y'all, we only got through one slide so far tonight.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Pretty darn deep though.
pretty
Yeah.
deep and heavy. We got two more really deep and heavy slides like this, but they're not as bad as this one was tonight. So let's wait. I don't want to break up the third level because it's going to confuse us going into next week. And it's 6:54. So I think I'm going to end that right on that one. And we'll take it up the third level next time. And then after we get through the third level, we're going to talk about the transcendentals a little bit, and then go in straight into explaining who God the Supreme is, which we've already done, but it'll refresh y'all's memory to do it. So okay, so let me swap out the shares here. Does this help what we've done tonight, y'all?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay. I don't want to waste y'all's time, so
No, I don't know.
Never.
never. I don't want to talk over your heads either, so that I have to be careful, and I just want to make this understanding, I tell you what would be difficult, going through 105 and 106 through the paper itself all the way through, because we've gone through all these concepts now. It'd probably make more sense, I don't even remember doing those 105 and 106 in a class. I think we just read them because they were too difficult for most everybody to understand. So y'all could probably understand it at this point. Okay.
It seems like it's like a description of a complex chain of command.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I agree. 100%. All right, let's see here. Roddy, would you like to do our prayer of acceptance tonight?
Yeah, of course. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By the same faith, I became a child of God, and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God the supreme, the sovereign of our universe of Nebaton, as Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Man, I want to remind everybody out there in internet land, we are having Saturday classes. We call it Lunch with Jesus, and we're going through the life of Christ. We're on paper 120. We'll be doing the second half of that this Saturday at noon. So if you're available, come and join us. If not, maybe you can watch it later. But a lot more simple than what we've been talking about here tonight.
A lot more simple.
A lot more simple. For sure, for sure. All right, so those that can make it Saturday at noon, I'll see y'all then, and those that can't, I'll see you next week. All right, and
Hey, again, thank you, Roger.
you're welcome. Thanks
Thank you.
everybody for coming. All right, see you soon.
Good night.
Hey, Roger,
Yeah,
I don't think I'll be there next Thursday. I'm going to try and make up a class. I've started a jewelry class and I was out of the country for the first one. So
yeah.
I think I'm going to do that next
Try to
Thursday.
make it
I'm not
up.
sure.
Okay. All right. See you after that then.
Okay, great.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.